Hello, everyone. This is one of a series of short interviews that I've been conducting at the Bay Area Alignment Workshop, which is run by FAR.AI. Links to what we're discussing, as usual, are in the description. A transcript is, as usual, available at axrp.net. And as usual, if you want to support the podcast, you can do so at patreon.com/axrpodcast. Well, let's continue to the interview. Yeah, so hello, Alan Chan.
Hey.
For people who don't know who you are, can you say a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm a research fellow at the Center for the Governance of AI. I'm also a PhD student at Mila in Quebec, but I'm about to defend in the next few months. Okay. So my background is in math and machine learning, but starting 2/1.5 years ago, I started doing a lot more AI governance stuff, basically, and joined GovAI, where I've been for the past year now.
Okay, cool. And at the moment, we're at this alignment workshop being run by FAR.AI. I'm wondering, how are you finding it?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I mean, I think the main barrier I have to get over internally in my head is like, I really would just like to, chill and not really do much or get other sort of work done, right? But I'm finding it is actually very helpful to talk to people about the work they're doing, because it actually does inform my own work. So it's, way better than I expected.
Let's talk a little bit about the work you're doing. So I understand that you've been thinking about agent infrastructure. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on there?
Yeah. So maybe let's back up and think about agents in general. So what's the story here? So story here is something like, okay, we're building systems that can not only tell us what to do in our lives or give us nice advice, we're also building systems that can actually act in the world. So cloud computer use, it can interact with your computer, maybe do kind of transactions for you, maybe send emails for you. And as AI systems get better and better, the question is how do we, what does this world look like where we have agents interacting and mediating a bunch of our digital interactions? What sort of interventions do we need to handle what kinds of risks that could come up? So that's a sort of question with agents in general. A lot of my work in the past year has focused on thinking about what interventions could we try to prepare in advance that could be relatively robust to a range of threat models. And when I say threat models, I mean, okay, maybe right now we're worried about agents that could spam call people. That's just really annoying. It also disproportionately affects people who are older or not as well educated, right? As agents get more capable, maybe we become more worried about agents carrying out cyber attacks or being able to act autonomously in a biolab and do stuff like that.
Okay. And just to help me understand, so when you say threat model, you mean a bad thing?
Yeah, it's actually a bad thing,
yes. Rather than a bad capability or a bad way a training run could happen. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So one question for me, because I guess I have a lot of uncertainty over how fast capabilities will improve and whether things will plateau. So I guess one way, in the past year to deal with this uncertainty is to think about what sorts of things might be palatable to people across a very wide range of beliefs, particularly drawing upon things that have worked in sort of other kinds of domains.
And I guess your answer is agent infrastructure.
So I think this is one answer. So
what is that?
So I guess infrastructure sort of writ large is just any sort of large-scale technical system that enables particular kinds of functions. Yep. So if we think about the internet, right? What is internet infrastructure? It's IP protocols, it's HTTPS, it's public key cryptography that allows you to interact with people in a secure way online. So that's sort of infrastructure. Thinking about agents, what are some examples of agent infrastructure? So some of the stuff that I've been working on in the past year includes, your agent is interacting with my agent. It'd be really good if I knew sort of who the agent was and who it belonged to. So maybe you want some sort of ID.
Okay.
An ID system is infrastructure, right? Or maybe one other example is, okay, I interacted with your agent. I sent your agent some sort of message. It turned out this message was actually a worm or something. And authorities want to be able to trace that worm back to somebody and somehow take it off the internet or something like this.
Okay.
So you need systems to be able to do this kind of thing as well. I guess a moniker for it is an off switch sort of thing for that particular example.
So I don't know. A question I have in the back of my mind is why is this more acceptable to or why does this make sense for a wider range of beliefs? than, I don't know, just interventions on the agents itself. And it sounds like it's because a lot of these things are sort of just like tracking what agents are doing, having a better sense of like, okay, this agent was at this place doing this thing, and now if like a bad thing happened, we can like deal with it. Is that roughly the right idea, or is there something else going on?
So I guess I'm not claiming that it's more robust to sources of risk than interventions on the agents themselves. So I guess there are two things here. Like the first thing is that I think interventions on agents themselves can like itself be robust to the type of risk. So for example, like alignment or something, right? Like
Yeah.
I think alignment has become a pretty widely accepted meme nowadays just because people think, oh man, like it is number one, very useful to not have AI systems that want to kill everybody.
Yeah.
But it is also actually very useful if you can align a system well enough such that the developer can prevent somebody from using an AI system to generate spam or something like this. So yeah, so I'm not making any claim about sort of the robustness of interventions on the agent themselves.
Okay.
I think my claim is more that like interventions on the agent themselves seem useful and probably necessary. It seems good if we also thought about additional interventions just in case those don't work out in a sort of Swiss cheese type model.
Okay.
So like, why might interventions on the agent itself not work out? Well, maybe people just don't adopt them because of competitive like dynamics type reasons. Maybe they don't actually generalize that well, and we don't understand generalization that well. So it'd be good to have sort of things in the environment that can stop the agent, even if the agent itself is behaving poorly.
Gotcha. So roughly, so do I understand the perspective right that it's a combination of, hey, here's this like here's this like domain of things we could do that have been like previously not thought about, and also within the domain, okay, let's like maybe think about things that are more robust to different threat models.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's sort of like, let's do this whole of society approach or something like this to handling AI risk. And yeah, like if you push me, I guess, I think the heuristic I'm operating under is something like, well, it seems just in a lot of other domains in life, we do things on the agent itself in addition to things like outside. So if you think about traffic safety, for instance, well, it is very important to train very safe drivers, but we also recognize that drivers can't act safely perfectly in a perfect way all of the time. So that's why we, in some jurisdictions have stuff like roundabouts because they're actually safer than regular intersections.
Yeah. So I guess the traffic analogy is interesting because I can think of like two types of things that is done in traffic to improve safety. So one kind of thing is just making the situation more legible to drivers, right? So like making sure that the lines on the road are bright, right? Making sure that like making sure there's not one of these weird kinds of corners where you can't see the cars coming ahead of you. And one of them is interventions. So I guess that's an intervention to like make the situation more legible to the relevant agents. There's a second kind of intervention, which is sort of like kind of literally slow down the agents, right?
Yeah.
Like have like physical things that mean that people can't like do their stuff in a dangerous way, but can do stuff in a safe way, right? And a third kind of infrastructure in the driving realm is basically identification so that you can catch bad drivers and punish them, right? So like license plates being the major one of these, speeding cameras being another one of these. So I guess this is a proposed trichotomy of things you could do with agent infrastructure. I'm wondering, what do you think of the trichotomy, and like which ones do you think make more or less sense in the AI realm?
Sorry, so just so that I have things clear. So the third one was like identification type stuff.
Yeah,
roughly.
So the third one is like, so make the relevant domain more legible to the relevant agents. Kind of literally somehow physically just prevent the relevant agents from doing bad stuff, and identification, leaving traces so that if a thing does do a bad thing, then you can like somehow punish or deal with the behavior later.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. Yeah, I like this trichotomy. So the third thing I think works even if your agents are bad, because then other agents can refuse to interact with your bad agent.
Right.
The first thing I think works if you have agents that are in some sense law abiding or can respond to positive incentives. Yeah, what was your traffic example again?
The traffic example was like literally making sure the lines on the road are
I
are
see,
bright,
I see.
like making sure that they're not faded out.
Right.
Replacing the like dingy old traffic lights.
I see. So this could be something like supposing you had agents that were good at like following instructions and or the law. This would be something like, okay, like before every economic transaction with another agent, you just put in the context, like here are the relevant economic, laws or something.
Yeah.
Like this.
Or like here are the relevant economic facts that
Right,
would let you
right.
know like how to judiciously behave, right?
Right. And here are sort of the legal obligations you have to your user as like a fiduciary or something.
Yeah, or maybe it's not even legal, right? Like I'm sure there are things you can do with roads that help you, like drive more considerately, or like it doesn't even have to be legal. Just like things you can do to make, like sometimes I behave inappropriately because I have a misread of the situation, right? Like I don't know, that happens to me sometimes. Maybe like sometimes it happens to well-intentioned AI agents.
Yeah.
And like making various facts more legible. What could such facts be? Like, I don't know, how scammy is some other counterparty, right? Like, if I have my own AI assistant and it's like negotiating with some other AI assistant, you could imagine some infrastructure that's like, oh yeah, make sure my AI assistant knows that like that other negotiating AI has gotten tons of bad reviews. Like
Right.
somehow that's making the world more legible to my AI, that is like helping it, be a better player and not like accidentally send all my money to some scam.
Yeah, there's an interesting way in which these categories blend, because you could imagine a
Right.
law or instruction being something like, okay, follow the relevant laws when you engage with the other agent, but if the other agent is doing something shady, like please report it, to some sort of agency or whatever. And maybe this feels sort of like a little scummy or something, talking about it in the abstract. But like, yeah, I could imagine some sort of system like this. What was the second part of the trichotomy again?
So there was make the world more legible to the agents. There was like physically either make it impossible or make it like difficult for the agents to behave unsafely. So like speed bumps would be one example of this on
Right.
roads. I don't know, things that prevent you from going too fast, or things that kind of ensure that you look in the right direction. Or yeah, I guess laws that okay, I'm not sure I have tons of examples of this, but yeah, this is I don't drive a car, so
Right.
my lack of knowledge is showing
Yeah.
right now. But speed bumps I'm aware of. As a
I
thing that
haven't driven a
exists.
car in a very long time. Yeah, I mean, like, I guess the direct analogy to speed bumps is like rate limits, which we already sort of do to prevent DDoS attacks. So maybe this is
Right.
relevant across more domains. I guess another analogy is like limiting the affordances of an agent. So I guess there's some sort of ambiguity about whether it's like the developer doing this or like the agent you're interacting with is doing this, right? But there is a difference between, okay, I'm just going to give my agent access to my computer and my terminal, and they're going to have sudo access, like
Right.
computer use, right? Like let's just lose everything. Versus, okay, like we're really only going to give your agent access to specific kinds of APIs. We've tested them very thoroughly. Like the functions are very well defined.
Yeah, so I guess there's like just like a whole host of things you could potentially do in the agent infrastructure space. I'm wondering, are there specific examples of things that you're particularly keen on?
Yeah, I guess this is the thing I'm pretty confused about what to prioritize. Some heuristics to think through are one, what are more or less easy wins, especially things that you might be able to get in through existing efforts or existing legislation.
Okay.
So one example of this is IDs for agents, like at the most basic level, just some sort of identifier, but you could imagine attaching more information to the identifier, like an agent or a system card or something like this, or history of incidents or some sort of certification that we might develop in the future.
Okay.
And the reason why I think this is a relatively easy win is because, so firstly, there is just like a general consensus, I think, about transparency around where AI systems are being used. So to the extent that exists, it seems very useful to tell a user or another party, oh, you are actually interacting with an agent, and maybe this is the agent identifier, so that you can tell OpenAI or something what went wrong, that this agent caused the problem if the thing went wrong. So like there's this already a social consensus. The next thing is that I think it's quite plausible in legislation that you could get this through. So in the AI Act, I forget if it's Article 50 or something, but there's this section saying like providers of general purpose AI systems have to make sure that when users interact, when natural persons interact with those systems, they know that they are interacting with general purpose AI systems. And I guess to me, like a read is like, oh, like, yeah, like let's have some sort of identification for these kinds of systems. So it seems like an easy win. I guess the question though is like, even if it is an easy win, is it actually a useful thing to do? Which gets to my second heuristic. It's like, let's try to identify pieces of infrastructure that can be scaled up or down in, I'm going to call it intensity or severity, according to what evidence we have before us right now. So, I mean, if you don't actually think that agents are going to cause a bunch of problems, like if you think it's mostly going to be fine, I think it's totally fair for you to say, okay, like maybe I'm fine with having an ID that has some identifier, but like I really don't want it to have any user identifying information. Like I just really want it to be the basic, oh, somebody knows that an agent is doing something, right? But if we did get substantial evidence that, okay, like these agents are just misgeneralizing all the time, and they're just finding ways of getting around our like limitations in their affordances and getting a bunch of new tools, right? Okay. Then maybe somebody's more likely to say, okay, like we really, number one, have to make sure that some user at the end of the day is going to be accountable for like spinning up this agent. And number two, like we also want to attach information to this agent about the affordances that it has available so that other people can be like, oh, like, why does this agent have so many tools? You know, maybe I'm going to be a little suspicious, not want to interact with it.
I wonder, like, so that makes a lot of sense. Do you have examples of infrastructure that fail or propose things you could do that would fail that second test where you couldn't like easily scale them up or down? Just to help me think about.
Yeah. So, yeah, this is a good prompt. I guess it depends on how you individuate infrastructure.
Right.
So one example is, suppose you had some sort of ID system and like you built some sort of kill switch so that some actor was able to just unilaterally kill an agent corresponding to a particular ID. Yep. It seems hard to like get rid of that if you force OpenAI and Anthropic to like build it into their agents or something. It seems liable that the government might misuse it in some sort of way.
Okay.
So maybe what I'm alluding to here is that like there are like steps you can take, and then like there is in some sense a point of no return or something like this.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. So identification for agents. It seems like that's a thing that you're something of a fan of. Is there, or at least interested in right now? Are there other things?
Yeah. So one thing is, I guess, we call it like agent channels or agent highways in the paper. And the idea here is you probably want to incentivize some isolation of agent traffic from just. So it depends on how you operationalize it. It could be from like human traffic or from traffic from other software systems in general. But the reason is that you might want to be able to shut down agent-specific channels and minimize the impacts of that on just people going about their daily lives. So, for example, some agent spreads a text worm over a channel. You want to be able to just shut that down and not have that text worm infect other people's AI assistants.
Gotcha. And by channel, you mean like the medium that the agent is using.
Like there are a variety of ways of operationalizing this. The sort of easiest way is, okay, let's just have separate APIs for services. So like for Airbnb, there's like an agent API versus, the regular API. And maybe eventually Airbnb realizes, oh, wow, like actually most of our traffic is coming from agents. So let's just shut down the regular API or something like this. Yeah. That's like maybe the easiest way. There, of course, are some feasibility problems and questions here. You could even go a level more intense and be like, okay, like should we have like separate IP addresses for agents? Like separate, even just internet hardware to have agent stuff running, so that we can just like go in and shut down those servers specifically, and have the rest of the human internet running.
And it potentially seems like a win-win. Like, suppose you're really bullish on agents, you might want to be like, hey, I don't want humans cluttering up my beautiful agent channel.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I think there is definitely an argument you can make to people who do want to develop and deploy agents that this is also a win for them.
So one thing this is kind of reminding me of is sort of like Redwood researchers work on AI control, right? Like just making sure AIs aren't able to pull any funny business. Like, whereas this seems like sort of an externalized version of control. I'm wondering, do you think that's an apt comparison? And like, what do you think the similarities and differences to that approach are?
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan. I will say though, I am not like fully read up on everything that they are doing at this particular moment. Yeah, do you happen to be?
No.
Okay.
Sorry. I haven't been productive enough at this workshop.
Yeah, I mean, I could imagine that like, so I guess it's my understanding is something like, okay, the setup is we have some like trusted models. We have this bigger model that's potentially not trusted. We want to understand what we can do to either constrain what this bigger model can do or have some sort of assurance about what the bigger model's behavior is.
Yeah.
And I guess the connection, like I could totally imagine like if you come up with some really good protocol for making sure that your smaller models can say something meaningful about the larger models, like this thing could just be infrastructure, you just scale it up.
Imagine
and
it being a dense protocol.
Everybody just like downloads this or something, right? So like how this could work is like, okay, I have my GPT-6 agent and it's interacting with your GPT-7 agent. And like, just to make sure that I'm not getting fooled or something like this, I take an AI control protocol and I just like use it. Or something.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of the AI control thought, is just like, oh, okay, we're going to make sure we have the right internal API so that, this model submits commands to this thing and this model gets to gate execution of those commands in this place. And, like somehow it seems like it's a similar flavor. So you've mentioned this paper. Like if listeners are listening to this and they're interested to read your thoughts about like agent infrastructure stuff, where and when can they do that?
Yeah, so hopefully this paper will be out soon. I mean, it's been in the works for quite a while. I feel like I've started writing this paper in like June-ish, but like the thinking has been, and it's gone through a lot of revisions and still going through some sort of feedback. Hopefully by the end of the month, like hopefully by December, I think like, I should be able just to go to my website or go on archive and find it. Otherwise, I do have like, I would say some agent infrastructure stuff, but maybe not as cohesive as a vision, like maybe more high level stuff.
Fair enough.
Already out.
Okay. And where's the stuff that's already out?
You can check out my Google Scholar.
Okay.
So visibility into AI agents was the most recent thing, IDs for AI systems. So we actually try to sketch out how this ID system could work in that paper. And then visibility into AI agents is another paper that's a bit more high level, trying to sketch out what other stuff might we need to help governments and civil society just know what's going on with agents.
Great. Well, thanks very much for chatting with me today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
This episode was edited by Kate Brunotz, and Amber Dornace helped with transcription. The opening and closing themes are by Jack Garrett. Financial support for this episode was provided by the Long-Term Future Fund, along with patrons such as Alexei Malafeyev. To read a transcript of the episode, or to learn how to support the podcast yourself, you can visit axrp.net. Finally, if you have any feedback about this podcast, you can email me at feedback@axrp.net.